All right. Oh, my volume's way down. Hang on, let me fix that. All right, everybody can hear me? Okay, dokey?
I don't hear you.
Jason, put it away for right now, babe. Okay. All right. So today, when we read Hatchet, we're going to be looking at and talking about
What chapter is it?
cause and effect. We're not in a chapter yet. So who can remind me, what is cause and effect? When I'm thinking about a story, what is cause and effect? Fiona, what's cause and effect?
Cause and effect is like you to put your key in your car and crank it. That causes it to turn on. So if you like do something and it's a cause, if you do something that causes it to do something, it affects it.
Okay.
And it does the thing that you want it to do.
Okay. So Fiona basically just gave an example of what, like, she literally was like using her eyes and like pointing, like you were getting hot and you just turned your heater off over here. So yeah, something happens and it causes something else
To get worse or better.
to get worse or to get better. Yes. So thinking about Hatchet so far, if I said a cause is that the pilot had a heart attack, what would the effect of the pilot having a heart attack be? Because the pilot had a heart attack, what happened? Josie.
Then the plane crashed into the pilot.
Okay, yeah, so the plane crashed and Brian had to try and fly it on his own. Good. How about the night in his shelter when he heard some noises and it was too dark for him to see and he was scared and he just kicked out into the dark? That's the cause. What was the effect?
That something spiked him.
Something spiked him. Turns out it was a porcupine. So he kicked out wildly, not knowing what he was kicking at. The effect was he got stabbed, poked. Okay. Cause Brian throws the hatchet.
And the effect was the hatchet made sparks.
Hatchet made sparks, and we could take it even further. The hatchet made sparks, so he was able to figure out how to start a fire. Good. What if I give you the effect? Can you rewind and find the cause? Brian was finally able to get some good food. That was the effect. What was the cause? Kendall, birthday girl. It's Kendall's birthday today.
So whenever he found the cherry tasted and he got a little bit sick.
Okay, so cherries. What would be another effect of Brian? He found the gut cherries. That helped him finally get some food. What's another effect of a more recent effect of Brian finally feeling full and satisfied, getting some actual protein? Sean?
He threw back all up.
No, not throwing up. That's not what made him feel full and get some protein.
That wasn't that.
Riley?
The eggs.
The eggs. Okay. He found
Didn't get this.
turtle eggs, right? And what else? We don't. He's trying to get
Fish.
But he hasn't yet.
fish. We haven't got it yet, but the effect is he's feeling full. The cause was he found turtle eggs. So he said something more than just berries. Got some protein that'll get him some strength. Okay, so we're going to be listening for some more cause and effect. Kendall, I don't know if you saw it. Josie said happy birthday. All right, so today we are at chapter 13. I don't know if you guys noticed, we are a little more than halfway through this book. Okay, so let's see here, 13, 14, 15, 16. We'll finish it next week.
Well, we'll finish it next week.
Yeah.
What chapter are we on?
13.
We're on 13 today, guys. We're starting chapter 13 today. Okay. Brian stood at the end of the long part of the L of the lake and watched the water, smelled the water, listened to the water, was the water. A fish moved and his eyes jerked sideways to see the ripples, but he did not move any other part of his body and did not raise the bow or reach into his belt pouch for a fish arrow. It was not the right kind of fish, not a food fish. So let's pause. Do you remember? What is Brian holding in his hand? What did he make?
A spear.
That was last week. He made a spear, but then he decided he was going to try and make something else. You guys remember? Jason?
He's making an arrow.
An arrow.
A bow and arrow.
A bow and arrow.
But he doesn't have any arrows. He does.
Okay.
He could use the spear.
All right, but he's still going to try and use a spear. He's trying to become the lake.
Why did he come away?
Because if he is the lake, the fish won't notice him, and he might be able to catch one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sean Muscat. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let me rewind a bit, too. Why is cause and effect important to notice in a story? Why is it important? Jason.
To notice what's happening. So, say you forgot it, you skipped a chapter because you weren't here, and you're like, wait, why is he doing this now? What caused him to do this? Because something's affecting him, and now you're like, what caused this effect to him?
Okay, so Jason said it's important for you to understand why things are happening in the story. For example, if you missed a day of school or you skipped a chapter or accidentally 2 pages stuck together and you missed a page, if you read the part where he woke up really sick and throwing up, you'd be like, wait,
What caused him?
what happened? Why is he so sick? You don't know. It helps you. What else? So
I think I found cause and effect.
you found a cause and effect. Okay. It helps you get to know your character better, right? So you can understand when things happen. You can predict how are they going to react, what might happen, okay?
I remember.
And it also helps.
I remember another cause and effect out of the story. Like if you're like, why is this porcupine coming? He had those berries, those mushed up berries. So the porcupine came in, and you're like, why is the porcupine coming in? Like, but you missed the part where he got the berries.
Okay, Jason said he remembered another cause and effect that he came up with. Because Brian left all of those fresh berries in his shelter, that's why the porcupine came in the first place looking for
The
berries or the food.
And
Good.
the bear came to that bush thingy where the berries were, and the effect was Brian got scared. The cause, bear came up to the bush where Brian was, and the effect was Brian got.
All right, Jason's all over it. He said another cause, bear came up to the berry bush. The effect was Brian got scared and took off running.
He stayed still, remember, because he didn't want the bear to
But-
notice him.
Right, but he stayed still at first,
And
and then he got scared and took off running as soon as the bear kind of eased away a little bit. Okay, so cause and effect can also help you as a reader make a connection. Tell me how. How can cause and effect help you as a reader get more involved and or make a connection? Fiona?
Because it might have, like, depending on what book it was, it might have actually happened to you.
Okay.
So, like, because this happened, now you're doing this.
Okay, so Fiona said the cause and effect that happened, depending on the book, obviously not this stuff that's happening right now in Hatchet, but depending on the book, the cause and effect might be something that's happened to you, and it makes you feel closer to the character, or you can predict how the character's going to behave because you know how you would behave in that situation, okay? All right, so he's standing in the water as still as possible, trying to just be the water so that the fish don't even notice him. The food fish stayed close in the shallows, and did not roll that way, but made quicker movements, small movements, food movements. The large fish rolled and stayed deep and could not be taken. But it didn't matter. This morning, he was not looking for fish. Fish was light meat, and he was sick of them. He was looking for one of the foolish birds. He called them fool birds. And there was a flock that lived near the end of the long part of the lake. But something he did not understand had stopped him, and he stood, breathing gently through his mouth to keep silent, letting his eyes and ears go out and do the work for him. It had happened before this way. Something had come into him from outside to warn him, and he had stopped. Once it had been the bear again. He had been taking the last of the raspberries, and something came inside him and stopped him. And when he looked where his ears said to look, there was a female bear with cubs. Had he taken 2 more steps, he would have come between the mother and her cubs, and that was a bad place to be. As it was, the mother had stood and faced him and made a sound, a low sound in her throat to threaten and warn him. He paid attention to the feeling now, and he stood and waited patiently, knowing he was right and that something would come. Turn, smell, listen, feel, and then a sound, a small sound. And he looked up and away from the lake and saw the wolf. It was halfway up the hill from the lake, standing with its head and shoulders sticking out into a small opening, looking down on him with wide yellow eyes. He had never seen a wolf, and the size threw him. Not as big as a bear, but somehow seeming that large. The wolf claimed all that was below him as his own, took Brian as his own. What does that mean, that the wolf is claiming everything and took Brian as his own? What does that mean? Grayson, what does that mean?
He's basically taking Brian as one of them.
Okay, he's considering that Brian is one of them. What else? Fiona, what do you think it means?
I think it means like the wolf has lived there for like a long time. So that's kind of like his land. So he's saying that like everything here is mine. And he is Brian, meaning that Brian is now on his territory.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So the wolf has been there, we assume, longer than Brian. And he's up on this ridge looking down saying, dude, this is my territory. Everything here is mine. What gives a wolf the right to say it's mine?
That it's been there way longer than him, and
It's been there way longer, and what else, Sean?
stronger.
This is like, I have read like the text from the social studies book, like when the settlers came to America and Indians were already living there, like it was their land.
Okay, so 2 things. Jason said the wolf can claim it as his own because he's stronger,
Has
more experience in the wild.
It's scary.
Who's going to win, Brian versus the wolf, if they had battled?
Well,
Probably the wolf.
maybe because he does have that spear.
Okay.
To be like, get on out of here. I'll shoot this arrow at you.
Because I couldn't chat with any of my kids over the Monday, but it doesn't work. They just click on it and nothing, it just goes away.
Did you, when you started your session, did you
Make
enable
Johnny?
to start chat?
So I'll go back and check that again. Maybe
Jason.
I need to reset it because they just.
Jason, go help Miss Delk's class do their securely.
Well, we did it all. We did all your steps.
Yeah,
But now when they try to chat me, it won't chat me. So maybe it's something. Maybe I need to reset my end then.
maybe.
Okay, I'll try. It's okay, but I'll check on you in a second.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, and then Sean said he's having a text-to-text connection with actually our social studies book because it made him think of when the settlers first came and they were trying to set up and say, this is ours, except that the Indians, the various tribes of Native Americans were already here and they wanted to stand their ground and say, no, this is mine, okay? So that's kind of the thing. I think the wolf is standing there. Is the wolf trying to threaten him?
No, it's just trying to warn him right now.
Just trying to warn him right now, right?
He's showing a sign that he needs to get off of his turf soon.
Okay, Grayson said maybe the wolf is kind of giving him this warning, you need to get off my turf. This is my area, okay?
Or make peace.
Okay. Sean says hopefully they can make peace, okay? Brian looked back and for a moment felt afraid because the wolf was so right. He knew Brian knew him and owned him and chose not to do anything to him. But the fear moved away, and Brian knew the wolf for what it was. another part of the woods, another part of all of it. Brian relaxed the tension on the spear in his hand, settled the bow in his other hand from where it had started to come up. He knew the wolf now, as the wolf knew him, and he nodded to it, nodded and smiled. The wolf watched him for another time, another part of his life. Then it turned and walked effortlessly up the hill, and as it came out of the brush, it was followed by 3 other wolves, all equally large and gray and beautiful, all looking down on him as they trotted past and away, and Brian nodded to each of them. Why is Brian just nodding at the wolves?
They're respecting him.
He just
Okay, they're showing respect to each other.
he doesn't want to get them all riled up.
Or get killed.
He doesn't want them to get all mad at him, so
Okay.
he's trying to keep a low profile.
He's trying to keep a low profile, not make any sudden big movements. He wants to not be threatening and get them riled up. Okay. Fiona, what do you think?
She's not saying, she's kind of like saying to him, like, I'm just here. I don't want to be here, but I'm here, and I don't know what to do.
Okay. Fiona said he's just kind of acknowledging, look, I know I'm here. I'm not going to bother you. I don't want to be here, but I'm here. I won't bother you if you won't bother me. Right? Okay. All right. For now, let's see what happens. Okay.
Until I go mad at him.
All right. So let's rewind. Because what was the cause that allowed Brian to sense that the wolf was that far away up on the ridge? That's the effect. The effect is Brian was able to sense that the wolf was way up there on the edge watching him. What was the cause that helped Brian sense that, Sean?
Like,
the
cause?
What caused Brian to just know that that wolf was up there on the ridge watching him?
You could, like, hear it? And
Usually you can sense when something's staring at you.
Jason says you can sense when something's staring at you, but it just even said at the beginning of this chapter. What happened? What had already happened to Brian that gave him that sense of knowing? What, Sean?
The
bear.
and the cubs.
The mother bear and the cubs.
That made him more wary of his surroundings, because if he would have taken 2 more steps, then it could have been a bad day for him. But since he didn't, he heard a sound off in the distance, and he heard the wolf.
Okay, so because he's encountered a bear, it turns out twice now. Once for what was maybe the daddy bear on its own with the berry bush, and then the second time he mentioned remembering a mama bear and the cubs, same over by the same berry bushes. Okay, so that gave him that sense of just kind of feeling and knowing. And Jason's right, like you kind of have this like sense about you. You just kind of can tell if somebody's just like
I don't.
staring you down.
I can see you from the
Okay. All right, here we go. All right. Boop, 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 boop. Brian nodded to each of them. He was not the same now. The Brian that stood and watched the wolves move away and nodded to them was completely changed. Time had come, time that he measured but didn't care about. Time had come into his life and moved out and left him different. In measured time, 47 days had passed since the crash. So we fast forwarded a little bit at this point.
Not a little bit, a lot.
A lot. 47 days. Over a month. That's what I was just thinking. It's 42 days, he thought, since he had died and been born as the new Brian.
Wait,
Better Brian.
Did he actually die?
No,
What is he meaning there?
His old self died, and
His old self died? How so?
his
What do
old
you?
spirit basically died, and then like his newer spirit that
Like kind of like a ghost when they find someone else's body.
Grayson says like this new spirit awakened within him. Sean says it's a ghost.
No, that like flew in his body and they possessed him. You know.
He's not possessed.
Sean,
But it's like this is
So basically,
You went off a
they were
little bit off on a
It's
tangent
a
here.
connection.
He died and changed.
He didn't actually die at all. Grayson's kind of right. A piece of him.
And people was like, he
Went
was
bye bye. Like on the next school bus.
probably like really
He's a
chill
lonely
at
person.
first.
I'm totally listening to Fiona who raised her hand.
He was probably like really chill at first, and then when he had the plane crash, he opened his eyes and like, whoa, okay, and like his old self, his like chill self, completely like went away, and now his new self, which is to be more aware of his surroundings and to start like living on his own and living out in the woods and trying to find.
Oh,
Yeah.
you can also add on to that.
So let me recap for them because I don't think they can hear Fiona way back here. Fiona said he was probably, I'm assuming, can you guys hear Fiona way back there when she talks? Okay. She said that old Brian was probably a pretty chill, normal kid. Didn't have to worry about things about survival. But when he got to the forest and all of this happened, he realized that that chill part of him it wasn't very useful in the forest, and this new survival version of Brian kind of awakened, and he had to learn all of these things and do all these things, and all of the chill parts of him basically died away because they served no purpose in the forest, right? Josie, thoughts?
I guess for me, it's like it was like an instinct that he had never discovered in himself before, and that it just like whenever he was in trouble, just like awakened.
Yeah, so this part of him that he's talking about, it was always in him, right?
But he never used it.
But he
because
never-
was always spoiled and sick.
Yeah, he never needed it. He never used it because he never needed to, because just like all of us,
We're spoiled.
we're in the grand scheme of things, we're pretty spoiled, right? For the most part, we have everything we need. Our parents make sure, our families make sure that we're taken care of. We don't have to go find our own food and hunt for food. I'd be in trouble if I actually had to do what Brian is doing in this book. I'd be real hungry. And we'd be in trouble if we had to build a shelter, right? Okay? I don't want to battle a bear, and I don't want to stand in the lake stabbing fish. I don't want to do any of that. So,
I will have like 5
in the grand scheme of things, we're probably all the chill version of Brian. Okay, Sean.
Like, when we watched that One Man School Bus movie, well, part of it, when Miss
Frizzle.
she like split into 3 parts and it showed every different one.
Okay, so Sean's making a connection with the Magic School Bus, and I get where you're going with this now. With the one we just watched that Josie projected for us, when Miss Frizzle split into 3, she split into the 3 parts of her personality. So she split into the very like smart, strict school teacher, and then her like daring, adventurous side, and then her goofy, silly side. So that's exactly right, Sean. So he says that that old part of him died, but when he goes back, if he is able to go back, is that part of him, that chill part of him, actually dead?
No, it's just
It's still inside of him too, right? Those are parts of his personality.
For the survival instinct. I'd say so.
Right, but that had to kind of chill so that he could bring out the survival instinct.
Like Miss Frizzle would have, like their fun crazy part and her like strict self would have like kind of disappeared a little bit, so it would have just been only brave adventuring one.
Right, so Fiona said to compare, the strict teacher and the silly Miss Frizzle would have had to die in this situation, and survival Miss Frizzle, adventure Miss Frizzle would have been the one that taken over. Sam.
I wonder how he's doing mentally.
Sam says, I wonder how he's doing mentally.
Yeah.
That is
We
a
only
great
know what's
question.
going on with Fizzle. He's sad.
So let's make a cause and effect prediction.
He's sad.
We know that Brian so far has been out there for 47 days. So he's been doing fine, we assume, capturing fish, turtle eggs, berries. He's going after these fool birds that he's talking about now.
Turtles are fish, so guess what?
So he's probably doing okay, and we know that he knows how to do fire. He's got a shelter. So it seems like everything's
Maybe
going
he
well.
himself.
So because Brian is seemingly doing well, he's made it over a month now, month and a half.
You made it.
Because Brian is doing well, how do we think, what is the effect mentally on him?
He's gone 1 month, 2 weeks,
in 6 days.
Okay, 1 month, 2 weeks, and 6 days. Jason did the math. How is he doing mentally? Because he's doing well, surviving, and he's figured it out. What is that effect on him mentally? I love that question, Sam.
That's a good question.
Hang on. Sam, I'm going to let you go to it first since it was your question. What do you think?
I still don't think he's doing good because he has nobody to talk to, and it doesn't mean if you have like success and you're doing well, it doesn't mean like you feel good inside your head.
Okay, Sam says, I bet he's not okay. Because just because you have this success and you're able to survive,
Doesn't mean you're always good in the head.
that doesn't mean you're automatically okay mentally. What kind of things is he missing right now?
He's probably missing the city
His
and his
Family?
family.
He's pretty lonely right now, right?
He's probably missing like food and being able to sleep in a cozy bed.
Okay. He's missing some of the actual comforts of home, a cozy bed, something more than just
Like TV.
a bed, TV. But he's all by himself. He's alone. He doesn't have anybody to talk to or to share. So think about this. You have your best day ever. You hit a home run, make it a grand slam. Okay? Okay. Best game ever, and you've got nobody to go tell it to, nobody to share it with. Does it feel as exciting if you have nobody to share your success with?
No.
You study hard, you get 100% on the test, and you go home, and your parents don't even ask you how you did.
They always do.
Like, is it as exciting if you don't have anybody to share your success with? No. So I get it. Like, success isn't everything. Money isn't everything. There are a lot of things in life that sometimes people think are so important, and it turns out that
The most important thing is family.
most important thing, family, having somebody to share your life with. Okay, possibly. Let's see how Brian's doing. Let's check it. Does anybody have any other thoughts on how Brian might be doing mentally? You think Sam's assessment is pretty
He's just a
fair?
mess.
I love that you were wondering about that and asking about that, Sam. Okay, what effect do we think? We don't know because it just fast forwarded us. What effect do you think it's having on him physically to be out there for that long? In the beginning, it said he got tan and he lost weight.
I know.
But now what?
His body's probably aching all over. He's
Okay.
probably got some kind of sickness already.
Okay, Grayson said he's probably just flat out achy all over from not having any kind of way to get comfortable. Virtual friends, you're awfully quiet over there today. You might still be sleeping. Somebody,
He probably
you
doesn't have
guys,
vitamins.
what effect do you think being out there for 47 days is having on Brian physically? All right, Josie, I'll let you go. Thank you for participating.
He's probably like really, really dirty.
His belly caved in.
Really dirty. Sean says his belly's more
I know.
caved in because he still
I know.
isn't getting great nutrition. Grayson, what else?
He probably doesn't have much vitamins. He probably needs to find more though.
Yeah, he's
like
kind
stuff
of like really
from
tired all the time because
he doesn't have much nutrients.
Okay, he doesn't have the right balance of nutrients, so he's probably really tired all the time. He gets tired pretty easily. Okay? Because if he's only eating fish and berries, is that a well-balanced diet?
No.
You can live, but are you truly like healthy? Probably not.
You just have a bad headache because after being hungry for a while, you can start getting headaches.
Okay, headaches for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so we got some predictions on what we think the effects might be on Brian being out there for so long. Wait, what effect do you think this has? It said for a while he was feeling very hopeful. Do you think what effect does this have on his hope? Macy, what do you think? Is he still hopeful?
No, that's another thing. Remember when we said we were going to read?
Okay, so that kind of plays into that mental game that Sam was asking about. Macy says no, she does not think he has a lot of hope left. Why not, Macy? Why is he not feeling very hopeful anymore? Probably.
Because the plane, it went past him and it's probably never ever coming back.
Okay, the plane that we heard about, it went past him. It's
It
turned around. It didn't go past
Okay.
him. It flew close.
It's been 47
Yeah, I would
days.
just lose all hope and just make my
Sophie says he's probably
All
given
the
up all
animals-
hope and he's just kind of decided this is my new life.
Not
Okay.
I'd run.
I never
Run? Where?
I would like that life better, though.
Grace says he might kind of like it, the peace and the quiet. All right, let's see here.
No, members, I wasn't quiet.
All right. He was born as the new Brian. When the plane had come and gone, it had put him down, gutted him, and dropped him and left him with nothing. The rest of that first day he had gone down and down until dark. He had let the fire go out, had forgotten to eat even an egg, had let his brain take him down to where he was done, where he wanted to be done and done. So, exactly what Macy was talking about. That plane went by and it killed all his hope. He gave up. Quit eating, let the fire go out. He wanted to die. He had settled into the gray funk, deeper and still deeper, until finally in the dark, he had gone up on the ridge and taken the hatchet and tried to end it by cutting himself.
Oh gosh.
Madness, a hissing madness that took his brain. There had been nothing for him then, and he tried to become nothing, but the cutting had been hard to do, impossible to do, and he had at last fallen to his side, wishing for death, wishing for an end, and slept, only didn't sleep. With his eyes closed and his mind open, he lay on the rock through the night, lay and hated and wished for it to end, and thought the world cloud down through that awful night. Over and over the word, wanting all the clouds to come down. But in the morning, he was still there on his side, and the sun came up, and when he opened his eyes, he saw the cuts on his arm, the dry blood turning black. He saw the blood and hated the blood, hated what he had done to himself when he was the old brine and was weak. And two things came to his mind, two true things. He was not the same. The plane passing changed him. The disappointment cut him down and made him new. He was not the same and would never again be like he had been. That was one of the true things, the new things. And the other one was that he would not die. He would not let death in again. He was new. Of course, he had made a lot of mistakes. He smiled now. Waking up at the lake shore after the wolves were gone, thinking of the early mistakes, the mistakes that came before he realized that he had to find new ways to be what he had become. Okay? So there's always a tomorrow, right? He's always got another chance to make things right.
Better.
Make things better.
Make us bad.
You don't have to just sit and feel sorry for yourself. There's always going to be hope, and he slept on it, or at least laid there thinking about it, and he woke up ready to try again. Thank goodness.
It reminds me of a song called Sad. It's like the song like where the guy tries to let go of his old self and like wants to become a better person. And like the hope with his like old self, and then like the new Brian is his new self. What's the old self of the person? That's like
All right. Sam was saying that it reminded him of a song, but I didn't know the song.
yeah. It's like
Who sings it?
XXXTentacion. Like a
He died.
yeah. He died.
That's on his forehead.
I don't know. Okay. All right.
I don't like it that much.
Sophie,
I want to know what the palette in the water looks like.
you want to know what?
I want to know what the palette in the water
Oh, Sophie's curious about the pilot in the water. We're going to have to read a little bit. We're going to have to read a little bit. Okay? All right. He was new. Okay, but he had to find new ways. He made a new fire, which he now kept going using partially rotten wood because the punky wood would smolder for many hours and still come back with fire. But that had been the extent of doing things right for a while. His first bow was a disaster that almost blinded him. He had sat a whole night and shaped the limbs carefully until the bow looked beautiful. Then he had spent 2 days making arrows. The shafts were willow, straight and with the bark peeled, and he fire hardened the points and split a couple of them to make forked points, as he had done with the spear. He had no feathers, so he just left them bare, figuring for fish they only had to travel a few inches. He had no string, and that threw him until he looked down at his tennis shoes. They had long laces, too long, and he found that one lace cut in half would take care of both shoes, and that left the other lace for a bowstring. All seemed to be going well until he tried a test shot. He put an arrow to the string, pulled it back to his cheek, pointed it at a dirt hummock, and at that precise instant, the bow wood exploded in his hand, sending splinters and chips of wood into his face. 2 pieces actually stuck into his forehead, just above his eyes, and they had been only slightly lower. They would have blinded him. Too stiff. Mistakes. In his mental journal, he listed them to tell his father, listed all the mistakes. He had made a new bow with slender limbs and a more fluid, gentle pull, but could not hit the fish, though he sat in the water and was, in the end, surrounded by a virtual cloud of small fish. It was infuriating. He would pull the bow back, set the arrow just above the water, and when the fish was no more than an inch away, release the arrow, only to miss. It seemed to him that the arrow had gone right through the fish again and again, but the fish didn't get hurt. Finally, after hours, he stuck the arrow down in the water, pulled the bow, and waited for a fish to come close. And while he was waiting, he noticed that the water seemed to make the arrow bend or break in the middle. Of course, he had forgotten that water refracts, bends light. He had learned that somewhere in some class. Maybe it was biology. He couldn't remember. But it did bend light, and that meant the fish were not where they appeared to be. They were lower, just below, which meant he had to aim just under them. He would not forget his first hit, not ever. A round-shaped fish with golden sides, side as gold as the sun, stopped in front of the arrow, and he aimed just beneath it at the bottom edge of the fish and released the arrow, and there was a bright flurry, a splash of gold in the water. He grabbed the arrow and raised it up, and the fish was on the end, wiggling against the blue sky. He held the fish against the sky until it stopped wiggling, held it and looked to the sky and felt his throat tighten, swell, and fill with pride at what he had done. He had done food. With his bow, with an arrow fashioned by his own hands, he had done food, had found a way to live. Yeah, baby. The bow had given him this way, and he exulted in it, in the bow, in the arrow, in the fish, in the hatchet, in the sky. He stood and walked from the water, still holding the fish and arrow and bow against the sky, seeing them as they fit his arms, as they were part of him. He had food. He cut a green willow fork and held the fish over the fire until the skin crackled and peeled away, and the meat inside was flaky and moist and tender. This he picked off carefully with his fingers, tasting every piece, mashing them in his mouth with his tongue to get the juices out of them, hot, steaming pieces of fish. He could not, he thought then, ever get enough. And all that first new day, he spent going to the lake, shooting a fish, taking it back to the fire, cooking it and eating it. Then back to the lake, shooting a fish, cooking it and eating it, and on that way until it was dark. He had taken the scraps back to the water with the thought that they might work for bait, and the other fish came by the hundreds to clean them up. He could take his pick of them, like a store, he thought, just like a store, and he could not remember later how many he ate that day, but he thought it must have been over 20.
Dang.
It had been a feast day, his first feast day, and a celebration of being alive and the new way he had of getting food. By the end of that day, when it became dark and he lay next to the fire with a stomach full of fish and grease from the meat smeared around his mouth, he could feel new hope building in him. Not hope that he was rescued, that was gone. But hope in his knowledge, hope in the fact that he could learn and survive and take care of himself. Tough hope, he thought that night. I am full of tough hope. Sam, does that answer your question? How is he mentally now? Better. He's actually doing better. He had another low point, but now he's coming back up again. It seems like that seems to kind of be happening to him. It's very much a roller coaster. You're right. All right. So, yes.
He has berries, fish, probably not eggs anymore, but just foods.
Berries and fish. He's probably definitely eaten all the eggs by now. Eggs wouldn't be good after 47 days anyway.
Fish.
Okay. Lots of different kinds of fish, though. Okay. Wait. Sean, yes. All right. So then you guys have questions for today, and then on the back there's some cause and effect as well. All right. So that's for today, and then we'll have math at 9 in 20 minutes. Do you guys have any questions for me? All right. Then I'm going to stop recording. All right. Bye, guys. I'll see you in a little bit.
Can I go too?
Yeah.